Right, okay, so we've got Kevin and Dan with us. We talked about why the demand is so big for Sesko, but of course, we are now comparing Sesko to Isak because it might be one out, one in at Newcastle. How different are they as strikers?
Yeah, I mean, obviously physically they're significantly different. Isak is a lot more polished in what he does, but of course that's been a process. There is still a rawness about Šeško, but you look at his journey. He was at Salzburg and he took a while to get going there, but once he did, he started to score goals. And I do think he's dynamic enough, I do think he's physical enough to deal with the Premier League. And what I like about him is that he's not scared to try things. There was a goal towards the back end of last season that I commentated on against Bayern, where the goalkeeper, Jonas Urbik, was a long way off his line. A lot of players would just lift that ball over the top of the goalkeeper. He went, no, I'll just hit it with the outside of my boot.
Yeah, we've
just backed myself.
Show that goal a lot, and rightly so, because it is.
It's an unbelievable goal.
It does stand out.
And he strikes the ball beautifully. Decision making sometimes needs a bit of work, but he's 22. So I think clubs are looking at him and thinking he's got a high ceiling.
But then, Kevin, I wanted to ask you how, maybe right now, as you mentioned, comparing him to Isak is very different compared to when Isak first joined from Real Sociedad. So when Isak joined Newcastle initially, he felt a little raw in terms of his finishing. So where would you compare Šeško's development to maybe where Isak started when he first came to Newcastle?
Yeah, I think that's fair actually, because the leap that Isak has made was not guaranteed, and there've been a lot of Premier League clubs that had looked at him and nobody pulled the trigger until Newcastle made that move. And that was always the question, could he translate what he'd done in La Liga to the Premier League? And he's been able to do that. It was interesting, there were a lot of comparisons between Šeško and Gyökeres with Arsenal, because Arsenal have been very interested in him for quite some time and then pivoted to Gyökeres. Gyökeres is probably a win now guy, but I think in 2-3 years time, Šeško, I think, has that higher potential, but I think he can score goals in the short to medium term as well.
So Pete did say how a deal between Newcastle and Sesko might be close, and there was a big but there, wasn't there? Manchester United could come in as well, and he could go there. Would Manchester United, Dan, potentially have the upper hand because of Rasmus Højlund? Where does he fit into that deal?
It's very interesting, and I think Manchester United's window is going to be very interesting going forward until this deadline. And we know Manchester United have been having conversations with RB Leipzig about what a deal could look like for Šeško. But in terms of what that looks for Rasmus Højlund, let's not forget they spent £72 million on a 20-year-old Højlund just a few years ago. And although Højlund has come out in the last few days to the press out in America saying, I want to fight for my place, no matter who comes in, we understand United would consider a potential offer if it suits the player and club. Of course, United need to sell players as well to raise more funds if they are to strengths in midfield and up front. So it's very interesting. All I would say, though, is for Rasmus Højlund is, you know, he gets a lot of criticism scoring 4 goals in the Premier League last season, but we can conclude last year that the whole team really struggled under Amorim's new system while they were getting used to it. The team now, compared to where Højlund joined 2 years ago, had the likes of a young Alejandro Garnacho, an injury-ridden Anthony Martial. Marcus Rashford was struggling for form. You look at the team now, even if Sesko arrives, having Mbeumo, Cunha around you, Bruno Fernandes, it's just a completely different team. So I personally think Højlund maybe just needs a bit more patience to be given to him and see how he works with this refined and fitter, as Amorim has said out in America, team that's had more time with him in his system.
Would he fit in at Leipzig, though, if Leipzig did want Højlund as part of this deal, or separate deal, or loan maybe? Would he fit in there? Would it work for Leipzig?
It would. They've looked at him before. They've been credited with an interest in him before. He's somebody, I think, that would fit their style of play, somebody that does want to run in behind, does want to make those runs. I know his link-up play can be a bit ragged, but I agree with Dan, actually. I think there's a quality player there still. I think it's crazy to give up on him at this stage because so many players have lost their confidence there. It's been a really difficult club to judge players at. You look at Xerxes, gone there with a decent reputation, and it hasn't happened for him either. But the fact that he's still willing to give this a go and fight for his place, I'd give it a little bit more time, but I understand the financial imperatives that United have.